Hello, my name is Patrick Mockridge. Today is Thursday, the 1st of October 2020, and this is the first in a lecture series giving my own take on the future of the Bitcoin slash blockchain industries, cryptocurrency industries. What direction is this going to take? What are the implications of this? I think Tyler Winklevoss said recently that in terms of blockchain technology, we're only at the bottom of the first inning of 10. And I definitely agree with this. Having a background as a chemical engineer, I've always viewed Bitcoin for a long time as more of a notarization service than a financial service. So the title of this talk is Reducing Competition for the Serial Channels of Belonging, Bitcoin Modeled as White Noise and the Radical Parallelization of Work in the 21st Century. So this talk aims to denoise all the hype around blockchain Bitcoin, all the talk of Lambos and fast lifestyles and I made a bunch of money, and it's trying to take a more sober, down-to-earth view that can accommodate many more people. Okay, so far in my opinion, the industry's been all about financial gain and building tools for people to speculate, a kind of a hyper financialization model. I think we need to focus more on jobs, on good jobs, on lifestyle, on sustainable outcomes. Okay, most people don't interact with the financial system according to financial products. They interact with it according to working in a job. Okay, and in most people's lives, most people's view of the world, the financial system is in some ivory tower in the sky. And I think, from my perspective, a lot of people need to get out of the ivory tower and get on ground level and connect with real people. Okay, like I'm trying to do. So my background as a chemical engineer, I've always had my own ideas, and I'm delighted to be able to share them with you just now. So what's special about Bitcoin? Bitcoin introduced a global financial settlement mechanism based on pure mathematics and software without a central authority. Prior to Bitcoin, every method of financial settlement required a central authority to validate it. Okay, and Bitcoin did away with this, and this is very, very good, very promising. Kind of a trustless financial settlement mechanism. What a great idea. And it will continue, it already has, and it will continue to radically and irreversibly democratize finance. We're only just beginning to kind of understand the implications of this. I'd like to share kind of some of the implications that I found, and I think in the last decade, the Bitcoin crypto industry has changed so much, and a lot of it has been spoken about how the price has gone up, market caps have increased, people have made money, but on the back end of that, behind the scenes, there are some kind of more unsavory things going on. So I'm involved with a company called Metcalf Energy, and we aim to mine Bitcoin and also help fight climate change by using currently underutilized sources of hydrocarbon energy, primarily flared natural gas. But in our kind of market research phase, we found that many large Bitcoin miners are ostensibly saying they're mining Bitcoin from renewable energy, while when it comes down to what they're prepared to spend money on, will seek out quite what we consider to be quite dodgy deals for electricity produced from coal, and not just coal, but kind of very dirty coal in jurisdictions that are questionable, I would say. Okay, and we also found miners piggybacking on grid connections intended for producers, buying electricity at the grid balancing price and mining Bitcoin with that. I mean, that's kind of predating upon contractual arrangements that were made in the past for other things. So this is kind of not so good. And then 87% of Bitcoins are owned by those with 10 or more, i.e. more than $100,000 in liquid assets just in Bitcoin, never mind what they have elsewhere. So we had, back in the day, 2010, 2011, we had this ostensible narrative that Bitcoin would democratize finance, but how, and make the world a better place, but how much is it doing that today? For all the talk of the increase in price and the profits, I'd say the key narrative is kind of getting left behind, in my opinion. So what holds Bitcoin back? I'd say the main thing is serialization. People would say other things. And I would say Ethereum is not all it was cracked up to be as well. I'm very critical of the smart contracting language Solidity. I don't really think it's good for very many things in the real world. And Ethereum was created by Vitalik Buterin because he was critical of people building on top of Bitcoin in a penknife fashion, okay, in a tacking things on. But what I believe about Ethereum is that Ethereum essentially boils down to Uniswap in execution, and that's just another sort of penknife solution on another serialized channel. So we had all this talk of Turing completeness. We didn't have much talk about why Turing completeness was even necessary, and not much talk about object capabilities and kind of code that's correct by construction that you can write and be confident will run in production according to what you think it does. And you know, we had the DAO bug, we had various other problems. So let's try and learn from these lessons a bit and see what's going on. So what is serialization? Serialization means that information on a channel must be processed sequentially as opposed to in parallel. Okay, so this means that things must be processed one after another. If two things go down, the first one has to be processed first before the second one can. Okay, so serialized channels of information command high rents, like real estate. So the financial industry is a good example of this. Okay, and and we may wish to serialize information. You know, there's good reasons to do it. If we're building a nuclear power plant, for example, we would want the commercials and the consumer electricity price. We want that information serialized with the safety case for the nuclear power plant. Okay, you need to look at those two things together to understand whether building it is a good idea for everyone. Okay, the kind of the downside of serialized channels is that they create bottlenecks of societal information processing and feedback. So a good example of this is you know, now Ethereum's starting to do more heavy lifting. Well, there's only one serialized channel, and the transaction fees have increased a great deal in the past 12 months. And people who hold assets on the Ethereum network that are maybe worth only a few dollars can't afford to pay $2-3 transaction fees to send those around. So it becomes a bit of a false economy, and all those assets that were created before they get left behind. And this is just a microcosm of what happens in general. We kind of already know this, and what does humanity do? You know, humanity loves to create kind of serialized channels of anything and sit in the middle of them and collect rents. The game of Monopoly has an interesting background to it. It was created by a chap who wanted to communicate the hazards and dangers of unfettered laissez-faire capitalism to the average people. Okay, and it's the guy who made it was a follower of the economist Henry George from the 19th century, and Henry George had a theory that all the monetary benefits of industrialization in cities tend to be sequestered by the landlords and property owners in that city, and the benefits tend not to filter down to the average people. And that's sort of just a case of what if there's an abundance of goods but not an abundance of housing and land to match, then the land becomes the bottleneck, and landlords can charge whatever sort of rents they want. And just all that extra production of textiles and silk and what have you just ends up in their hands as opposed to ordinary people's hands. So he had a very good point, but the problem was that people love playing Monopoly, okay? People love social competition, people love winning, they love the thrill of the game, and this sort of message of caveat emptor was completely lost on the market. The game was a raging success, but the moral to the story is sort of much less well known. Let's try and resurrect Monopoly as a fable, if you will, and sort of find out what's a bit more about what's going on here. And we could sort of say, well, so what? I won. I'm sitting pretty, but I would argue. Sorry, I'm going to light my cigarette just now. I would argue that we live in unique times with unique problems that require more of a systems analysis approach. This is what got me into Bitcoin and Ethereum to begin with, and I've sort of been disappointed so far as to how things have turned out. And considering the scale of the problems we face and the raw power and ability of these kinds of blockchain tools to change things, I think we need to get a bit more serious looking at this stuff. So I've made a long list of things that kind of piss me off. Top of the list is siren servers. Jaron Lanier writes about these. He has a book, You're Not a Gadget. Who Owns the Future? Great books. He has a number of kind of interviews and lectures online as well. You should definitely listen to him. And an example of a siren server, Facebook is a good example. So I remember signing up to Facebook when I was in university, and I kind of resisted to begin with, but then sort of everyone was on it and everyone was organizing events on it, and I think eventually maybe I was 23 and I eventually sort of capitulated and signed on. I was traveling the world. I was in Egypt and I wanted to sort of stay in touch with all the friends I'd made there. So you be a bit suspicious of it, but eventually, I'm sure we all had our suspicions, but we all kind of relent. But because it's a very useful tool, but what happens in the end is, and what's happening now, is that the users of Facebook are not the customers, okay? Because Facebook is free, okay? But it's not free. What it does is it collects our data and uses it to modify our behavior and sell predictive capability to third parties to, for example, produce fake news and subvert democracy, okay? And this is sort of the kicker in the small print that is a factor of all kind of what Lanier calls siren servers. Siren after the beautiful mermaids who would sing lovely songs on the rocks and would lure sailors to their doom. Okay, and it's driving a lot of this stuff, fighting for attention online, because our democracy is subverted and we're only being fed fake news. That kind of makes us angry, and then we fight for attention, but then our anger drives us into echo chambers where we can kind of be further controlled. Likewise, the apps and the way the data is displayed is meant to hack our dopamine reward mechanism to kind of keep us scrolling and sort of further warp our perception of reality. And the siren servers have given rise to a whole new form of business called surveillance capitalism. I've got the book here There's a great book written by Shoshana Zuboff, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, and it's a very large book, very thick book, over 600 pages, explaining how this stuff works, okay? And it's been around, the Stasi did it, the Gestapo did it. Now it's a big global business, okay? Opening your mail and reading it is a big global business, okay? And it's digital. Likewise, 2008 banker bailouts, they were supposed to fix the financial system. Now we have banks getting even paid to take loans from the European Central Bank, for example, while overdrafts for ordinary people have gone up to 40% in the UK now. And then if you're a bank, all you have to do is sit in the middle and send someone a credit card in the mail, send them a debit card in the mail, and you're making the easiest money in the world, okay? This is not good, okay? This kind of thing is not good, and is an example of kind of what happens when information processing channels become too over serialized, okay? And then on top of that, innovation is largely limited to software, and that software has a telos, has an end goal, which is pretty darn toxic and counterproductive to humanity's goals, I think. And in our daily lives, to put bread on the table, earn a crust, a lot of people are forced into cubicle work. There's been whole books written again about pointless jobs, jobs being created just to fill out managerial headcounts and things. And we have all this spare human creativity and knowledge and passion and desire, and it's just going to waste, in my opinion, and it's very sad. So it just keeps going. It keeps going. So student debt's a new thing. Banker bailouts didn't solve anything. I think the quality of tertiary education is declining, and we're not preparing, especially our STEM grads, to be able to attack the problems they need to attack and deal with the kinds of punches that are going to get thrown at them in the real world. And this leads them to be sequestered into this kind of the very same systems that are creating the problems, just in order to survive, essentially. And then this gives rise to your kind of Ricky Gervais toxic office politics going on everywhere. And it's just tiresome, basically. I think we're all just sort of tired of this shit, and we kind of want something better. So this is kind of a funny meme I created, and we're going to build upon it as we go. So this is just a starter for 10, okay? And it basically says, putting Dwight's stapler in Jell-O is it's very funny to begin with when the stakes are low, but when the stakes become very high, and the winner of the putting the stapler in Jell-O competition, Joe Biden, just wins it and points his face at the camera, and then everyone has to do what he says. It's not good. We need better ways of deciding things, I believe. And I've spoken about Henry George. There's many left-wing views that I'm very sympathetic to. I consider myself to be quite centrist in a lot of my opinions, and there's, especially on the left, there's just nothing there that you can hold on to, in my opinion. And I think especially on the left, we need to take a more human-centric approach and a less institutional, power politics-centered approach, because it's a race to the bottom, okay? And we want to enable people to race to the top, not to the bottom. So from that, we get into this, and I made a kind of a little political compass here. And on the left, the x-axis on the left, we have passion, and sort of Mac's story is next to that on passion axis on the left. He's all about blue collar values, reading all the right books about how to improve yourself, doing a good day's hard work, improving everyone around you. He's a real shining light, in my opinion. And then the other end of that, we've got capitalization, and we've kind of got Elon Musk there representing the capitalization end of the spectrum, because he's really damn good at capitalizing upon his ideas. And on the other axis, the y-axis, we at the bottom we have creativity, and the top we have process. So that's kind of easy to understand. I won't go into that anymore. And just like to sort of point out that, imagine we're all at Burning Man. So bottom left-hand corner, okay, well, a lot of passion and creativity, and we sort of come to the music festival, but it has a bit of a telos to it. It has a bit of an idea that we can make the world a better place, and we can innovate and use our intuition and kind of will to power to build a better future. Where on this map can we draw a line that will sort of improve our situation? Okay. And just sort of looking at it from now, if we go up through LinkedIn, through Mac's story, blue collar values, if we follow that to the ultimate end of processization, we get to Linus Torvald, okay, who is the number one authority for approving updates to the Linux kernel globally. And the Linux kernel runs billions of devices globally, okay? And then we're into kind of GitHub world, which is open source, okay? So the more engineers follow the good human values of Mac's story, the less they're able to capitalize upon their ideas, okay? And if we try and take a route through from Linus Torvald through to the blue square, which I'll get into, it looks a weird blue square, I understand, but we'll get into that in a second, okay? We go through Mark Zuckerberg's Siren server, which isn't selecting for competence, okay? It's not selecting for competence, it's not selecting for human ingenuity, really. It's selecting for itself, okay? It's selecting, and the kind of lowest, it's selecting for the lowest rent outcome, which is to hack people's minds and people's perceptions in order to subvert democracy and lobby. Essentially, it's like mechanized government lobbying, essentially, okay? And it's just incredibly toxic. Like, you could replace Zuckerberg with Google there or what have you, but essentially at the top in the middle is the Siren server that is keeping kind of Linus Torvald and the open source world kind of out of the capitalization world. Okay. And then at the top right, you've got David Icke's Reptilians from Saturn. That's kind of just, it's not serious. It's kind of tongue in cheek. I think it's meant to show that our perception of reality is sort of becoming so warped that, given all the fake news and all the democratic subversion and all the things going on, if you believe that all the fake news, then I guess maybe we are run by reptilians for Saturn, but I would say we're probably not. And it's just all this conspiracy stuff coming to the surface is mostly just a matter of our inability to deal with the reality around us rationally. And then just below them, and they've got the Rockefeller family there. You could easily have the kind of Rothschilds or the Mellons or any kind of old money, old institutional money there, and they can play one side off against the other, move their money around, hire some smart people who know what's going on to manage it for them, and they'll stay on the inside track and be fine regardless of what happens. Okay, if you go back down to the bottom, all the way to the other side, bottom left hand corner, we're at Burning Man again, and then we follow the Tai Lopez thing. I'm not sure how aware many of you are of Tai Lopez or not, but Tai Lopez was one of the first kind of self-improvement guys on YouTube. He advised people to go out, read loads of books, hustle, get out into the world and kind of make the best of it, get out of your shell and high libido, go for it. And you, at Burning Man, with no real discernment of what's going on, you could be forgiven for thinking there's a straight line between Burning Man, Tai Lopez, and Elon Musk. But that's not true, because there's a whole thing of government lobbying and subsidies and all kinds of stuff going on behind Elon Musk that you're never going to know about. Okay, he's never going to tell you that. Okay, and this is the other thing about the blue square, is it's the kind of the square of secrets. Okay, they're not gonna tell you how they run their stuff. That secret is a kind of key part of their success. And then all you're kind of left with, going from left to right, is gaming essentially. And I enjoy gaming. Rocket League's probably my favorite game. I'm not very good at it, but I love playing it. And there you have the latest winner of the Global World Fortnite Championship. He won $1 million, bully for him. But what about the other tens of millions, billions of gamers online who are subjected to some pretty horrendous monetization mechanisms, loot boxes, casino-like monetization mechanisms, and then even if they're good at it, where'd you go from there? To where are the skills transferable to? I'm not so sure. So I think the key to unlocking this lies in Peter Thiel, sort of in the middle between Tai Lopez and Zuckerberg there on the middle line. He's part of the system. He therefore can only say so many things, but he does give us some insights in his book 0 to 1 as to how we might start to crack this code. Okay, so when you say, oh well, so what, I'm a property owner or something, I'm doing okay, but we need to we're as adults, we're kind of here setting an example for the future. And we can't use Peter Thiel as some kind of singular moral authority of meaningful innovation in the Western world. I mean, whether you believe him to be one or not, there's probably no one better, in my opinion. And even then, I think we could do better than that. And then we could say, well, what about Greta? Well, this slide seems pretty harsh. I gotta admit, it does sound harsh, but all respect to Greta, she gets in front of the camera and says a lot of things that need to be said that, we as adults should be saying, but we're too afraid to, okay? And, bully for her. But in the end, in the absence of any further information on it, she's not giving us any actionable answers or things to do or ways to kind of capitalize upon solving these problems. We're kind of being blamed for not solving the problem, but how do we solve the problem? And if we replace the gamer with Greta there, and then just some kind of like Silicon Valley glib throwaway, like, by the way, don't be evil, like Google used to say don't be evil, and now you say that in Silicon Valley and you're kind of laughed out the room. So there's something going on there. So, by the way, don't be evil. Well, okay, I'll try my best given the circumstances. I'll try my best. Okay, so introducing a little process calculus. Okay, process calculus is the study of asynchronous communications between people and machines. Okay, it's kind of two constraints that you need to consider. One is liveness, and the other is respectness. Okay, and a good way to think about this is like if you have a Buddhist monk meditating at the top of the Himalayas in a cave, he's going to be maximizing his respectness constraint with respect to what he believes in, okay? Because he doesn't have to interact with the wider world there, okay? He's just kind of working on himself and like the purity of his spiritual journey, okay? But when he comes down the mountain to the local town to maybe get some supplies, that's a rough and tumble world, and he might not have much money, and, people still might be trying to screw him over, even if he is the Buddhist monk. The world's a rough and tumble place. It's not a lot of not nice people in it. So he's maybe going to have to sacrifice some of the finer points of his spiritual beliefs in order to sort of remain live and get the job done. And likewise, there's two more constraints, serialness and parallelness. Well, we've already gone over serialness. That's when information on a channel needs to be processed one after the other. Okay, parallelness is when things can be processed in parallel, separately from each other. Okay, and we can see this maps quite nicely onto the map already made. So passion has been replaced by respectness. Okay, capitalization has been replaced with liveness. Creativity has been replaced by parallelness, and process has been replaced by serialness. Okay, and you'll see these still map almost exactly the same. Okay, and the thing about blockchain and cryptocurrency, it allows us to now think about the totality of human information transfer in terms of process calculus. Okay, there's kind of nowhere. It used to be that the kind of banking system was off limits, but now it's not. Okay, so let's find out and see, if the banking system is no longer off limits, are we still ruled by reptilians from Saturn, or maybe not? I think not. Okay, that's my theory. And then, okay, well, again, so what? I won. Well, I want to find out if the reptilians from Saturn exist or not. I'm thinking they don't. Okay, I'm thinking they really don't. And just to kind of anchor this down, like I explained before, if we're talking about Industry 4.0, complex systems, global coordination, okay, there's nowhere from where we gather at Burning Man Festival deciding what to do. There's nowhere to go on this map to actually make anything happen. And then to just sort of have some glib Silicon Valley throwaway statement like, don't be evil by the way, well, why bother? Okay, I'd much rather go play tennis, game of five-a-side football, golf maybe, because at least then you know what the score is. With this, you never do. So so let's examine the first mistake, the biggest first mistake most people make. Okay, and that's to make the beeline from the green square to the blue square, and then rely on some kind of magic that no one understands to win. Okay, and this is fine if you're Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Okay, and I'm all for Zlatan Ibrahimovic becoming kind of god emperor of the world. I think he's great, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. And this is great for Zlatan, but the whole point of this global coordination thing is we're not all Zlatan. Most people exist in the heart of the distribution curve. Okay, Zlatan's thing is that he doesn't. Okay, and Dare to Zlatan is great marketing for Nike, but for everyone else, this is a business model today. Okay, there's a website called Quirky, and they harness collective intelligence. Okay, and they really harness a lot of it. They harness 97% of it from their community. Okay, Quirky get 97% of the ownership rights of everything their community suggests, and the Care Bears in the green square get 3%. Okay, and to just anchor this point in a bit more, this is not an opinion, this is a business. This exists because what existed before was worse than this. Okay, so this is the best we're doing today, and I would argue very strongly that it's really just a giant piss take. Okay, so this is a kind of an okay boomer moment here. Okay, this is like, you can't just sort of tell people to go out in the world and dare to Zlatan, because chances are they're going to get absolutely screwed over by Zlatan himself. Okay, so, and then the reason people do this, in my opinion, is because we're not teaching people the true proper value of the red and the yellow squares. Okay, we look at the yellow square, we see the kind of the startup entrepreneur grind, the sort of dog and pony show, pitch competitions, people kind of struggling to stay solvent and stay alive. And then in the top left corner in the red square, it's sort of the Linux engineers in the basement, the IT crowd, the kind of the woolly jumpers and long hours spent kind of doing what your corporate middle manager tells you to do. And we're not kind of currently treating either of these squares very well. And that sort of relates to, people are like, The only part I want is the blue square. I don't want the yellow and red, okay? So, and that sort of maps to this, okay? So if all we have in the yellow square is Greta and all we have in the red square really is Linus Torvald, well, maybe that's why no one bothers kind of exploring these spaces as fully as they could do, okay? And Gary Vaynerchuk said, I'm so on the guy, but he said one very interesting thing, that the Illuminati is merely our sort of collective Jungian shadow function that we are sort of unable to process, okay? And maybe these reptilians from Saturn are actually just artifacts of our collective subconscious because we're not exploring the full space of what we're capable of as human beings, okay? So, yeah, OK Boomer. We've had OK Boomer a lot, okay? And I'm not hating on all boomers here. I'm just saying, we need to do more. Like, why just tell Gen Z to sort of pull themselves up by their bootstraps when they're like 100 grand in student debt with a STEM degree they were promised a job interview in because there's a STEM shortage, but there isn't, and then just sort of asking them to play a rigged game of Monopoly, and then if they sort of fall off the wagon, we just sort of say tough luck, pull yourself up by your bootstraps again. It's rubbish, okay? And this is where a lot of this stuff comes from. It's not personal, it's just a case of, we need better leadership here. So I'll put this link in the comments below. I won't play it now because I might get a copyright infringement thing or something, but it's Billy Bean from Moneyball. He's in the room with his scouts. He says, there's rich teams, there's poor teams, then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us. We've got to think differently. It's the same kind of thing here. We're not going to beat the game by playing the same game as everyone else. You have to kind of think of a new game, okay? And maybe this new game will reveal something about daring to Zlatan by your bootstraps, because right now it's just a completely unreasonable expectation. And talking about collective intelligence when the best the market can do is like a 3% collective revenue distribution to the community, it's a complete piss take. It's a joke. And I think a lot of people need to take a lot more responsibility speaking about this stuff rather than just, it's fine for Greta as a kind of teenager to get angry and say you should do this, but there's grown men in the thing who need to be a bit more responsible and give a bit more direction, and they're the ones taking the piss. And I think it's quite reasonable to say OK Boomer to them and just say why bother, because there's really no point unless we start doing better with this. So if daring to Zlatan by your bootstraps is the current expectation, the current option, then we need to develop those building solutions to empower themselves and capitalize upon their empowerment. That's so absolutely crucial. If people can't capitalize upon what they're doing, they're not going to bother doing it. They're just going to see it as a thing that losers do, and I don't want to be a loser, okay? And this means going far beyond education, because education, even in the past when I believe that education was better, it still wasn't training people to the level that they needed to be trained in terms of collective intelligence, okay? Collective intelligence is like a next level that requires a great deal more independence and discernment, and we need to develop so many more leaders, and we're just not doing it at the moment. So, how can we model this? Well, Peter Thiel gives us, in 0 to 1, gives us some idea how we can start modeling this. And we don't beat a beeline from green to blue, we take a more circuitous route, okay? And a good example of this is PayPal. So hopefully you can see, it's my mouse pointer on the screen. Hopefully it's recording the mouse pointer, but if it's not, I do apologize. So we start in the green square, and in PayPal terms, that's like everyone agreeing that they want to be able to make payments online, okay? And then a bunch of entrepreneurs started to offer that as a service, okay, with varying degrees of quality, okay? The lowest being just offering a text box that was unencrypted that you entered your credit card in. So you can imagine, like, fraudsters were attracted to this like flies to shit, and a lot of these companies were going broke. But PayPal, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, the PayPal team did something very interesting. They created a machine learning pipeline that could predict fraud in online credit card transactions, okay? And it did it well enough to keep them cash flow neutral, okay, and that pushed them into this belonging square, okay, and this belonging square has a lot to do with predictive capability and insurance, okay, and good engineering essentially, okay. And all PayPal needed to do was stay cash flow neutral while all their competition went broke and all their competition's customers just came to them by default. And then what happened is like all the online payments became serialized through PayPal, and they beat the beeline to the blue square because they become the de facto monopoly, okay. And what I like about Thiel is he's a quite honest realist when it comes to the issue of monopoly. You know, we all play the game of Monopoly. We all like to have Monopoly. We're never going to sort of get rid of it. And I think one of the important things that comes out of 0 to 1 is, you know, your sense of belonging in society is mostly found by being unique. And like the more unique we are, the more parallel channels of cooperation we can open up. Because if I'm unique from you, then I don't need to compete over the same resources as you to exist in the world. So we can actually cooperate more easily. So there's something about the idea of perfect competition being a bit of a bait and switch, a bit of a false thing. You know, economists come out with this stuff all the time. And, you know, perfect competition is this. We're all Dwight in the office putting each other's staplers in Jell-O and laughing about it until Joe Biden appears on the presidential debate and it just turns into a complete car crash. So, well, I mean, we all saw that this week. Embarrassing. So Thiel suggests, you know, I showed that path before with Arrows and Lines. You know, this is done in maybe more of like a personalized understanding way, where like Dennis Bergkamp's career trajectory, Arsenal sign him, he gets live in the team, he starts getting picked for the team, and then, you know, he just starts doing amazing things where you can just absolutely count on him to turn a match, to be a key player in the key moment, okay? And then that makes him, up in the top left, the kind of an archetypal national level player. You know, people associate him with a strong sense of belonging, okay? And then after that, all the good things just seem to be serialized through Dennis Bergkamp, and that's highlighted by 1 month in the Premier League, he scored all 3 goals of the month. He didn't just score the goal of the month; he scored all 3 of them. Okay, it's first, second, and third, and it's that kind of personal journey that gives rise to these kinds of heroes that we all know of. I mean, Zlatan, Ronaldo, Messi. You know, it's all the same kind of thing. Okay, and this is a process, okay? This is a process that can happen on a channel, which is us, okay? Just like this is a process, okay? Just like this kind of soul-crushing, boring crap is a process, okay? And then we can start to see, if we replace the kind of glib Silicon Valley don't be evil piss-take thing in the middle there with Dennis Bergkamp, we can start to see what Peter Thiel means, okay? That's the process by which you beat your path into the blue square, okay? And Thiel has a point. It is some kind of elitism. You know, we're not all Dennis Bergkamp, we're not all Cristiano Ronaldo, but, you know, in my opinion, we need to think more in this way and take more personal responsibility for this stuff than do this and just sort of sit in our cubicle and argue and play silly games with each other, because that is a worse sort of elitism, okay? Sort of do as I say, not as I do. Is a worse sort of elitism than at least sort of getting up off your arse and giving it a go. So, in conclusion, in order to harness collective intelligence at scale, we must consider what it means in terms of a little bit of process calculus. If we do this, we can really start to unlock the power of blockchain and these new channels of financial settlement that can kind of free us from the shackles of the banker bailouts and all the rest of it. Okay, and this means we must parallelize wherever possible. And this means building systems around human creative excellence with built-in both initiation and belonging from concept. So we're taking the more circuitous route to excellence than just trying to sort of hack the matrix and on the fly type of thing. Okay, and this if we understand this and we understand that why our differences are so necessary for parallel cooperation, because if we're going to cooperate, we need to do most things in parallel. We can't spend all our time fighting over the same serialized channel. The presidential debates are a great example of that. It soaks up so much of our time and attention, and it's just a complete car crash. To switch off the TV and go and do something, go make something, go be as excellent and unique as you can be. And that is the underpinning of harnessing collective intelligence. Okay, and I think there's a lot of people punting collective intelligence to something different from that. And I'm quite happy that I've confirmed in my own mind that harnessing collective intelligence is all about being kind of individual centric, excellence centric, creativity centric, being the best we can be. Okay, it's all good old fashioned stuff. Okay, and it's our differences as human beings that allow us to cooperate at scale. And excellence is an art form. Okay, and art is unique to our own journey and our own life. And as adults, it's fine in primary school, high school, where your art teacher tells you what to do, what's good art and what's not. But creating art as an adult is about more than that. Okay, the bar is higher. Okay, and in that respect, we start to see censorship in a new light. But I won't get into that now because that's just a touchy subject on its own. So, in conclusion, by the way, don't be evil. Well, I did my best. Okay, and in my opinion, what I'm writing here is a continuation of kind of vaporwave art. People keep saying it's died. It keeps getting resurrected. I think vaporwave art is really the only thread of truth that says that hackers and artists can get together and actually make their stuff live and speak to their own journey and their own disappointments and their own confusions about what's going on in the world. And we'll get into why the world is so confusing in future. But I'm happy we start to sort of unpick the reptilians from Saturn a bit, this kind of Illuminati stuff. Like this clearly has kind of more to do with our own collective subconscious than it does with anything else, in my opinion. So this talk is intended for the cryptocurrency community in general. If you are into cryptocurrency, you're kind of familiar probably with the memes around crypto Wojak and his journey to being pumped and dumped on and back on work, going back to McDonald's. But let's take a more sober view of what's going on here. Okay, crypto Wojak starts out student debt. It's hard to find job security, your place in the world. Fed up with banker bailouts, all the rest of it. And he has some get up and go about him, and he starts thinking about things. And good for him. He notices that blockchain. There's something going on with blockchain that could solve this problem. Okay, but then he sort of left to figuring out for himself between all the shillbox platforms and the multitude of exchanges and speculative instruments what to pick out. Okay, and 99% or more of them are complete rubbish, to be honest. But still he was brave enough to get up and make a decision and buy. But as he gets into the red square, the only kind of sense of belonging he's going to get is probably a brief pump, a brief paper profit before the dreaded Bogdanov call and the exit scam, which leaves him feeling suicidal, and all his dreams collapse and he ends up back at McDonald's. But we need to do more for this guy, because at least he's trying. He's trying to do something, and we should support people trying to do things and not people not trying to do things. Okay, and in the part 2 we'll get into why, if we can get Wojak any sort of defendable sense of belonging in this red square beyond just line go up, okay, any sort of strongly creative or engineering sense of belonging, he can start to fight back against this stuff and therefore start creating insurable events. Okay, and we need to have insurable events to coordinate at scale. Okay, so there we are, Julian Jackson clonking Harold Graham in the mouth. Might look terrible, but that's an insurable event, okay? And they're both grown men, both knew what they were getting themselves into, and there you have your insurable event. So Thank you for listening to my talk today. I really appreciate it. It's kind of not meant for wide distribution, but if you've found yourself stumbling upon it online, I'm just happy to hear back from anyone. Anyone's feedback, good, bad, or ugly. I'll be uploading part 2 next week. I'll be presenting part 2 to the Blockstack Discord community call at 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, Friday, the 2nd of October. Maybe see you there. If not, just leave your comments in the comments section. And thanks for listening. Thanks.